The Three Children of Fortune. Once upon a time, a father sent for his three sons and gave to the oldest a cock, to the second a sneeze, and to the third a cat. I am old now, he said. My end is approaching, and I would fain provide you before I die. Money I have none, but what I give you seems to be little worth. It rests you with yourselves alone to turn my gifts to good account. Only seek out a land where what you have is still unknown, and your fortune is made. After the death of the father, the eldest set out with his clock. But wherever he went, in every town he saw from afar off a clock sitting upon the church steeple and turning around with the wind. In the villages he always heard plenty of them crowing, and his bird was therefore nothing new. So there there did not seem much chance of his making his fortune. At length it happened that he had come to an island where the people who lived there had never heard of a cock, and knew not even how to reckon the time. They knew indeed if it were morning or evening, but at night if they lay awake they have no means of knowing how time went how time went. Behold, he said to them, what noble animal this is! How like a knight he is! He carries a bright red crest upon his head, and spurs upon his heels. He crows three times every night, and states hours, and at the third time the sun is about to rise. But this is not all. Sometimes he screams in broad daylight, and then you must take warning, for the weather is surely about to change. This pleased the natives mightily. They they kept awake gloriously. The cook called the hour at 2, 4, and 6 o'clock. The cock called the hour 2, 4, and 6 o'clock. Then they asked him whether the bird was for sale and how much he would sell it for. About as much gold as an ass can carry, he said. A very fair price of such an animal, cried they, they with one voice, and they agreed to give him what he asked. When he returned home with his wealth, his brothers wondered greatly, and the second said, I will now set forth likewise, and see if I can turn my sneak to as good an account. There did not seem, however, any likelihood of this, for go where he would, he was met with peasants who had a good sneeze on their shoulders, as he had. But at last, a good luck would have it, he came to an island where the people had never heard of a sneak. There was soon as the corn was ripe, they went into the fields and pulled it up. But this was very hard work, and a great deal of it was lost. The man then set to work with his sneeze, and he mowed down the whole crop so quickly that the people stood staring open-mouthed with wonder. They were willing to give him what they asked for, much such a marvelous thing, but He only took the horse laden with as much gold as he could carry. Now the third brother had a great longing to go and see what he could make of his cat. So he set out. At at first it happened to him as it happened to the others, so long as the people brought their king to buy the wonderful animal, as as he kept upon the mainland he met with no success. There was plenty of cats everywhere, indeed too many, so that most of the young ones who drowned in the water as soon as they came into the world. At last, at last he passed over an island where it chanced most likely for him. Nobody had ever seen a cat, and they overrun with mice so such a degree that the little wretches danced upon the tables and chairs, whether the master of the house was at home or not. The people complained loudly of this grievance. The king knew not how to rid himself of them in his palace. In every corner mice were squeaking, and they gnawed everything that their teeth could lay hold of. Here was a fine field for puss. She soon began her chase and had cleared 2 rooms in the twinkle of an eye. The people then bes- besought their king to buy the wonderful animal at any price, for the good of the public. The, the king willingly gave what he what was asked, a mule laden with gold and jewels. And thus the third brother returned home with a richer prize than each of the others. Meantime the cat feasted away upon the mice in the royal palace, and devoured so many that it was no longer in any great numbers. At length, quite spent and tried with her work, she became extremely thirsty. So she stood still, drew up her head, and cried, Mayu, Mayu. The king gathered together all his subjects when they heard this strange cry, and many ran shrieking in a great fright at, out of the palace. But the king held a council to decide what was the best to be done. It was at length decided to send a herald to the cat to warn her to leave the castle forthwith, or else force would be used to remove her. For, said the councillors, we would far more willingly put up with the mice, since we used to that evil, than get rid of them at the risk of our lives. A page accordingly went and asked the cat whether she was willing to quit the castle. But Puss, whose thirst became very moment more and more pressing, answered nothing but Mayu Mayu. The page interpreted this to mean no, no, and therefore carried this answer to the king. Well, said the councils, then we must try what force will do. So the guns were planted, and the palace was fired upon from all sides. When the fire reached the room where the cat was, she sprang out the window and ran away. But the besiegers did not see her, and went on firing until the whole palace was burnt to the ground. The end.